Is this session 5, right?
Session 5, the second to last one in our lead conversion series.
Yeah, so mirroring and matching, I think, is something that for a lot of people sounds pretty scary.
Oh, yeah.
But do you want to maybe define that for folks and like try to give some context as to what it is, and we can unpack it a little bit?
Yeah, and maybe we'll talk about why mirroring and matching is really important first. Maybe we should start there, and then maybe we kind of dive into what it is. What are your thoughts on that?
Sounds great. Yeah, let's go for it.
Let's start with the number one rule that I've learned about human being. Well, there's 2 rules I think that anybody going through this lead conversion course should know. Number one is the only person leads actually care about is never you, it's themselves. Like, that's the uncomfortable truth real estate agents don't want to admit, is that a lead doesn't really care about you at all.
Right.
I say it a little more crassly in my coaching calls, but you all can read between the lines. They don't care about you. They only care about themselves. And that's just the reality. And even when it comes to you helping them, all they really care about with you is how can you provide value to them. And that's how human beings work in these situations where they have a need, want, and desire. You are either going to help them get that, or you're going to be a hurdle in the way to get that. And that's how they're going to be sorting you into those piles, right? So that's the first big thing. The second thing that we need to recognize is, naturally as human beings, we always like people that remind us of ourselves, right? The person we all like the most is ourselves. Mm-hmm. And the reason we like ourselves most, I'm gonna have to go shut off my messenger here. That's annoying. Oh my goodness sakes. That's really annoying.
You set it up.
Yeah. Exactly. So the point behind it is that we like ourselves the absolute most. And the reason is it's psychologically pretty easy to understand. It's because we're familiar with ourselves. And we like people that remind us of ourselves because we're familiar with it. It's the normal in our world. So really, honestly, the whole darn point behind mirroring and matching is simply this, is that we are, I guess you could say, morphing ourselves. We are being a chameleon to blend in to be just like other people. So this is the science behind it, that people will like you more when you remind them of themselves. Now let's take the opposite, right? Let's beta test this real quick in a little test. If somebody is the opposite of you and you encounter them in any form of process, those people naturally scare you. They make you anxious. They make you uncomfortable. Right? That's what we generally see. And I'm not saying that, if you're mirroring and matching, we're going to talk about some steps. We're going to give you some takeaways on how you can mirror and match here in a little bit. We're going to walk through some of that. I'm not saying you have to go from being a not at all introverted person to the quietest person in the world on a call, but you sure as heck you can't stay if you're the most extroverted person in the world and you're talking to somebody who's extremely quiet. You can't stay up here. You have to come down to here, right? If you're going to do it visually. And the point behind that is, the closer you get to this, the less distance between you, the more comfortable that person will feel. Right. Let's give a really good example of this, just offhand. Let's say, hypothetically, I'm a very direct, to the point person, and I'm in a schoolroom full of teachers. And I walk in, right? And one thing you should know about teachers is generally teachers as a whole tend to be more S-oriented, right? On the DISC profile, meaning they're more steady, quiet, they're the helpers. And same thing with nurses. If I go in as a high D and I'm hoorah, loud, to the point, the teachers are going to naturally dislike me because I'm not speaking in their language. And it doesn't matter. This is the thing you all need to realize is, the content of your message matters so much less if there isn't alignment between you and them. So the whole point behind mirroring and matching is simply this, is that in a conversation, Barry, whether I'm texting with you or talking with you, it doesn't matter. I'm mirroring and matching you. I'm becoming a chameleon. I'm morphing myself to become more like you. That's the whole point behind it. And we're going to talk about some of the things you can morph, some of the things you can intentionally focus on changing. And the funny thing is this, you actually already do this. Everybody does it. It's very subconscious that you do it. Right. But if you want to master it, you have to bring it to a conscious level, and then it becomes more normal. A really good example is, I am an 11 on the eye, meaning I have zero extroversion in me at all. But if you see me at an event, I have conversations with people all day long. And it's because I've built a tolerance to it. I've built this tolerance to mirroring and matching and having and changing myself and becoming more and less like others. So anyways, what do you want to add to that, Barry?
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. And I always taught mirroring and matching by reframing it, being a true leader. Servant leadership is not standing at the top of the mountain and saying, come here. It's going down alongside the person at the bottom of the mountain saying, let's walk up it together. And, people don't always remember, and this is to kind of speak to something that you just said, by the way, which was really insightful. They're not going to remember everything we say.
No.
And that's what you were saying. And they're going to remember how we made them feel. And, I'm a firm believer that if we want to, we can relate to just about anybody. And some of my best conversations are people that ideology is completely different when it comes to religion, politics, values, and I respect them. And I don't try to win the argument. And I think, mirroring and matching really is a compassionate way of giving someone a safe place to listen. This is the home purchase, Robbie, as you've already noted in some of the other sessions, it's stressful. Like they're nervous, they're anxious.
That's fun. And I thought selling a home was just the best thing in the world. It was hilarious.
Super stressful. Yeah. And if we can give an individual a safe place, and when I say safe, I mean their guard's not up, they're relaxed, they're using the part of their brain, fight or flight. They're not in that part where they're guards up, but they're able to learn and listen and feel comfortable with you. I think mirroring and matching really is one of the most compassionate things you can do when you're teaching a stranger something. Selling a stranger something. So nothing new based on what you said. You've said it so well, but just some additional context for maybe those that are watching. But
and what's funny, Barry, is some people are going to hear this discussion about mirroring and matching. This is something I internally wrestled with for a long time. Is mirroring and matching manipulation? And I've learned that mirroring and matching actually, in my eyes, is the highest form of empathy that is possible. And the reason I say this is when you change yourself to become more like the other person, you will literally begin to see the world differently. You will see and hear things from a different point of view. And dude, that's empathy. Empathy is the ability to disregard your own perspective regarding something and step into somebody else's shoes and imagine if I were in their shoes, this is what I would be feeling. We are able to expedite that when we're mirroring and matching, because if you're this very fast talking, loud talking person, and now you're having to come down here, you're literally going to look and feel and see things differently. Right. If my energy is usually up here and now I got to be way down here because somebody's talking about death or divorce or debt, I'm going to feel much more somber. That's empathy, my friends. It's not manipulation in my mind, because I have zero intent, although you probably could, right? I think manipulation is what you do with all of this. Are you taking it and trying to screw somebody over? Or are you taking this and trying to help somebody at the highest level possible, right? That's my goal in every single thing. It's the action. It's what is the outcome? I'm not trying to sell someone something they don't want. To me, that'd be manipulation. I'm manipulating you and I'm using you as a means to an end. That's not what's happening here. In this conversation, when I'm mirroring and matching, if it becomes very apparent that if they're not the right fit to work in my company, they shouldn't be buying a home right now. Maybe they're too emotional, right? Or whatever the story may be, my goal is not to sell them something and get them to do something that they're going to regret. My truest North Star is to help them make the best decision possible for them and their family. And mirroring and matching is one of those things that isn't just advantageous for the lead when they're talking. They feel more comfortable around you. It can also be very advantageous for you. You will see things so much more clearly. You'll understand where they're coming from. You'll see those concerns, and you'll start to feel things that you hadn't before. So I think that's one thing I wanted to hit on real quick is mirroring and matching for me is not manipulation. To me, it's empathy. It's the highest form of empathy I've been able to personally practice ever in my life.
Yeah, I mean, I think people confuse a subject like, first of all, you always get my wheels thinking. So it's like, as soon as you stop, I just want to talk. I think one thing that really stood out to me about what you just said is, you spoke to your motives and what's driving your decision making. And are we going to give you guys tricks and things to say, good tricks? I mean, secrets maybe is a better word. Yeah. But like going back to like a lot of these other sessions, it's going back to the heart of the matter, which for you, you're able to do this because you're coming from a really, really good place. And I think that was really well said. Mm-hmm. And, I think for me, I'm 100% I and 100% S on the disc. And so I'm just supposed to be walking around hugging everybody. I want to love everybody. I want everybody to love me. Yeah. And so I fell into mirror and matching because I was driven by, whether right or wrong, mm-hmm. I was driven by the desire to make them happy.
Yep.
And the fastest way I knew to make them feel comfortable and happy was to go on their level and speak their language mm-hmm. and approach it in their demeanor. If they started getting nerdy about interest rates, that's what I went with, because I was coming from the place. I just wanted them to be happy. I didn't want them to be stressed out. Now, looking back, I know that I fell into mirror and matching. But at the time, it was coming from that place. And so I really think it's important that, and I'm so glad you brought this up to initially, that people understand that this is not being fake. That's not what we're advocating for. This is, I mean, like, is it fake if you're born in America to speak Spanish?
Depends on who you probably ask.
It's a language. You know what I mean? Like it's a language, and your body language, your voice intonation, your laugh, all these things make someone feel a certain way. And it is a language. It's another language. And so in the same way, it's not fake to speak Spanish. Mm-hmm. It'd be fake to say, I was born in Argentina, right? That's fake.
Yeah.
That's a lie.
Yeah.
But to speak their language is not a lie. So, anyway, I don't want to digress too much, but you always get me thinking, dude. That's why this is so much fun.
Well, I'm glad there's at least one other person that enjoys speaking. I don't enjoy him. The other thing, so on that note, there's the golden rule, right? The golden rule in society has always been treat others the way you want to be treated. And one simple phrase that has really stood out to me was I had read about the platinum rule, and really the platinum rule is treat others the way they want to be treated. And that's what we're talking about here, is just treating others the way they want to be treated. Now, Barry, I got to tell you some just very simple things that I do that help me do this, right? When I call a lead, for example, if I'm calling a lead, the first thing I say is, hey, is Barry available? And a lot of people have always said, why would you ever ask that question? Barry could lie. And I've always just made the point, well, he could lie at any point. That's not stopping him, right? Right. He could hang up, right? He could just not text back. The reason that's so vital on the phone is when you answer that question, it gives me so much information the way you answer it, right? And we're going to reference the DISC profile briefly throughout this, just because it's a part of my natural language regarding mirroring and matching, because it correlates with it really well. But let's say somebody is a natural high D. They answer that in a very direct tone. They're like, yep, this is, right? Firm, forceful, to the point, because that's how a D naturally operates. And S is going to answer it much more quietly and softly, right? They're going to be like, yeah, this is Robbie. It's going to be much more quiet. A C is going to answer it quietly and with skepticism, right? And so if it was me, I'd say, yeah, this is Robbie. Who's this, right? And if the I answers, they're an I because they answer and they bring thousands of pounds of like sunshine and rainbows and just dump it on you. And there's like, oh yeah, hey, that's so great. Hey, who's this? Who's going on? Whatever it is. Barry, I can probably have you do that in a role play later. And I think you've done it a time or two. But the point is that the way you answer that is indicative of where you're at. And I usually, when I make my calls, kind of go in at the middle point on almost everything. We're going to talk about 6 key things that I think will influence your mirroring and matching, especially in person, voice to voice, whatever it may be. And actually 7 things, by the way. But the point is at that point, if you're 100% D when you answer that as Barry, I know I have to amp my D up, right? I got to be more direct and talk. And if you answer with more skepticism and you're quiet, I'm now going to lower some things. I'm going to come down, I'm going to mirror match you. And I'm doing it instantly before they hear anything else. Where I see people go wrong is they instantly go into their first question. And the way you ask that question, so just watch this, Barry. Hey, Barry, you're thinking about buying a home sometime soon. As a D, you respect that question. As an SC, you're like, what the? Get out of here, So you have to change it, right? With an SC, I'm going to say, hey, Barry, was just reaching out. Saw a post that you were looking at some homes on one of our websites. And I wanted to see, Barry, if you were just kind of looking for fun or to see if you plan on making a move sometime soon. Right? I'm going to slow it down. I can say the same word. And with a high D, like, hey, Barry, saw you were looking at some homes. Are you going to buy a home soon? And a D wants to hear it more directly to the point. And SC or somebody else, they would not hear it that way. They'd be offended by it. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, no, it makes perfect sense. And I really like how you broke up the different aspects where the personality traits are coming from and how they sound, because I think that a lot of people. So, for example, if you're a warm and fuzzy person, right, and you talk to a D, you might, who's maybe more direct and forceful, maybe you're going to be anxious or overly react to that. But I think if you remember what you've just reviewed, I think it'll help them kind of put it in a box and say, okay, this is this type of personality, and I'm going to try to navigate it. And so, yeah, no, this is great, Robbie. I think. Some of the people that I've talked to about mirroring and matching, I think they just think that it's literally like a mirror, and it is. It's more. It's mirror and matching is a two-way street. It's something that we, I'm adapting to you. My mirror doesn't adapt to me. It just reflects me. Yep. So, anyway.
And whole name, Barry, where I see people go too far with it is you're mirroring and matching, but you're not a sponge. What I've seen happen sometimes is people become a sponge, and they will have, because there's a lot of heartbreaking conversations you'll have in real estate. And if you're a sponge, if you're talking to 20, 25, 30 people a day, which is very normal in my world when I was an ISA, right? Or maybe even more. Truly about half those conversations, if they were thinking about doing something, were negative, right? Half of the reason people are buying and selling homes are not for really, exciting reasons. That everyone's like, I don't know if I really believe with that, or I don't believe in it. I'm like, I guarantee you, it's just people aren't telling you it. They're more comfortable telling me the shit they're going through. Sorry for the S word, but the crap they're going through compared to most other people, right? Because people have to feel very comfortable to open up about it. And so the interesting thing is when you're doing that, if you're a sponge, what happens is that eats at you. And like, dude, you can easily become depressed. I've coached many ISAs or lead converters because they absorb the negative energy that person's been living in. And it's so easy. So you got to be a mirror to the person, but don't be a sponge of it. Don't absorb it because it will ruin. And usually what it means is when you get off a call like that, you got to go take some time and take a break, right? And just like, And it should create perspective, right? That's where healthy is. My heart breaks for Barry because Barry's going through this.
Mm-hmm.
And I love Barry because he's another great human being, but I can't carry his weight for him. I can't do that forever. So that's another little interesting piece.
Yeah. No, that's good, man. And I think that will keep people from being too bummed out when they are absorbing and hearing. And I had to learn that when I was pastoring the church. You can care about someone's problems, but if you take them on, you're worthless, Correct. And I think another thing, to think about, there's the platinum rule, the golden rule, and then there's the silver. And the silver rule is don't do to others what you don't want them to do to you. And most agents, when it comes to a lot of the lead conversion topics that we're discussing, mirror matching being one of them, they think that somehow, because they're not coming from, they don't even maybe know what empathy is, or they think that I don't want to be a slimy chameleon, I want to be true to who I am, and ultimately they don't do, and so they're not trying, and they're not putting themselves out there and adapting to the consumer. And what that means, and I had an agent, man, that he only was able to connect with a specific kind of client.
And it was people like him, right?
What's that?
It was people probably just like him. If I had
Yeah. And I would listen to the calls, and I would give him specific feedback. And, I'm coming from my warm and fuzzy, I want to give the guy a hug, so I don't want to make him mad, but at the same time, I need to tell him the truth. You know what I mean? And so I'm like, hey, you notice you're only selling homes to like one type of person? What do you mean? Well, you're not branching out. I said, your sales price over the last 4 years has stayed the same. Yeah. The area you're selling has stayed the same. And you're always calling on the other side of town, but you're not adapting to them. And he finally started to catch on, because I was pretty annoying about it. But, I keep bringing these stories out because what I really want people to understand is you can do this in the right way, and be amazing, and be not only a good human, but like you can sell a lot of houses with this.
Yeah, you absolutely can. So there's a couple things that I would recommend. You had said some people don't know what empathy is. And one of the big lessons I like to teach there is there's a massive difference between empathy and sympathy. And what it really comes down to is sympathy is me telling someone I'm sorry or something like that. And here's what I'll tell you. And I want you all to feel this for a moment. If you've gone through something in your life, maybe you lost a loved one, a family member, gone through something, a divorce, something that sucks. And we've all gone through something, right? Whether it's we lose a grandparent, a parent, a spouse, kids, whatever it may be. Unfortunately, the common script, not even script, the common script that you hear from people is, I'm sorry, right? And you hear it over and over and over again. And what I've learned is I'm sorry is actually really self-serving, to be completely frank. So if Barry, you're going through something and you told that to me and I say, I'm sorry, or I'm so sorry, what I've seen is a lot of people use that and then they immediately transition the conversation to something else. And what I've learned is that there's a major difference between sympathy, me saying I'm sorry, and me being empathetic. And I think what it really comes down to is we like to be like problem solvers, and we're recognizing we can't solve this problem as humans. And what you need to let go of is you need to let go of the attachment that you're going to solve, that your words are going to solve the problem. It's not going to, right? Rather, what you need to realize is what that person craves more than anything is somebody just signaling that that person is there with them.
Yeah.
And when people have told me the worst things I've ever heard, I didn't say I'm sorry. I've honestly, what's happened sometimes, Barry, is I'd said nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing.
Right.
And I was like, Barry, my heart breaks for you. And I honestly don't even know what to say to you right now.
Yeah.
Because I didn't.
Right.
And that's because the last thing people want in those moments is me to say, I'm sorry, let's move on in the conversation. They want you, if they're being vulnerable enough to share it to you, they want you to respect that vulnerability, not be dismissive of it. And that's the problem with I'm sorry is it's dismissive. It's in a box. I'm sorry about it. Let's move on. And empathy is showing another human being that you're willing to be there with them through that. And that's what humans want. Do you see the human psyche has two main driving factors, and it layers into everything we've said, but the driving factors, we all want to feel important. And we want to feel like we matter. Like that's Dale Carnegie said that's the number one driving factor. And I agree. It's we want to feel like we matter.
Right.
And we want to feel like our story matters, like it's validated. The problem with I'm sorry is it's dismissive and moving on. And if you want to go read about this, if there's somebody that I trust more than anyone when it comes to empathy, is go check out Brene Brown's video, Empathy versus Sympathy. She walks through this extremely well. And trust me when I say this will help you be a better husband, father, son, wife, spouse, leader, manager,
right.
Whatever you are is going to help you be better, because we're very hardwired, because it's easy to say I'm sorry. We're not hardwired to just be there and be empathetic and show love in those moments. We're just not taught it in a lot of cases. And frankly, I was fortunate enough, Barry, that my mom has always been an emotional firefighter. What I mean by that is she, when other people are emotionally impacted, was never the person to run away from it. She leaned into it. And I don't always agree with the way my mom did it at all, but I saw her run towards it, and that was a habit. And for me, I can have really deep conversations with people because I don't make it about me and me saying I'm sorry. But watch that stuff by Brene Brown and read her book. She is brilliant, probably one of the best people in the world. And she's a super direct high D. So all you business owners out there, you'll love that somebody talking about these things called emotions and empathy, these little touchy-feely things are coming from somebody who dropped the F word all the time in her book and is direct to the point and has many multi-million-dollar businesses. And that's what's cool about her is she speaks a lot of CEOs' languages, right? It's why I think, honestly, she's kind of ballooned is she knows how to mirror and match, whether it's her or she got lucky, I don't know. But yeah, she's probably a little bit of both, let's be honest. But what I think I want people to hear is empathy trumps sympathy. I would have been doing people a disservice in those moments if I would have been, I'm sorry, because I'm sorry always follows up with me saying something else. It's always dismissive every single time.
Yeah, this is such an insightful dimension of mirroring and matching, Robbie, that you're highlighting. I don't think it's something that is thought about enough because it does make you a good human.
Yeah.
But, I think I remember somebody that was grieving. I said the typical, I'm sorry, they're in a better place. And I tried to make them happy and encourage them out of being sad. Yeah. And the person looked at me and said, you're just giving me platitudes. You're just trying to make it go away for yourself. And I was like, oh, it wrecked me.
When someone finally has the courage to call you on that, it wrecks you.
Yeah,
it really does. You nailed it on the head. It's your words, I'm sorry. And then, so Brene Brown talks about how a lot of people say, I'm sorry, but at least, right? So what happens is like if parents, for example, if one parent is being vulnerable at how their kid's struggling in school, some parents will say, I'm sorry, that sucks, but at least your kid's alive. And it's dismissive, right? And it doesn't mean that it's not logically and intellectually wrong, right? The last thing a human being wants to be told, though, is that your feeling is insignificant. That's what you're doing accidentally when you do the I'm sorry and dismissing it as you're saying it's insignificant. And don't get me wrong, I mess this up all the time. It's called being a freaking husband. I screwed up all the time, friends. Okay? I'm the biggest polluter of this. All right? No, I'm not. I do this all the time. I mess it up. But what I've learned is no matter what the emotion is, I try to fix it. There's a really funny video it's all about a gal who has a nail in her head. and she's talking about how blah, blah, blah is going on. And her husband's like, if you just remove the nail, and then eventually she's like, it's not about the nail, right? There's always something else. And the reason that is human beings' emotions are incredibly complicated. And you're trying to fix an emotion that will not be fixed by something you do right then and there. It's not going to be by justifying that life's really good or they're in a better place, right? There's nothing you're going to say that's going to fix it. What can happen is you can allow them to open up about it. You can show love. You can give a hug. For me, silence is a hug in that moment, right? It's just being there. And then truly there's like this, there's these moments that will just stick with you for your life. You know, I've mentioned a few of them on these calls where the person just tells you more about it. And it's one of the most honoring things I think that you can do for any other human being. And the cool thing about it is that's what creates prolonged business. That's what creates cheerleaders that rave for you. It's not just the person's house that you sell for the most amount of money, right? By the way, there's this big misconception about what people really care about when it comes to selling their home. And I guarantee you that's not what 85% of people care about. It's, do they feel like they're your number one client? Again, it's a drive of, do I feel like I'm the most important person in your world? That's all they care about. Even if it's something else for a little bit lower than maybe what some others, they don't care about that as a whole. There's exceptions to this rule. They're called C's, and they only care about the numbers, just so you all know. But other than that, most people care about feeling like they are the most important client. So anyways, I would check those out. I would check Brene Brown out. She hopefully can help you understand it, because this stuff is complex, man. This is emotional cognizance, I guess you could say, or whatever. It's different.
Well, and I think before people tune out and they're like, wow, they're going really warm and fuzzy, emotional, if somebody has the courage, you said this last session, something to this effect, I'm not going to say it as well, but someone has either the courage or the desire to share something really, that's challenging with a new stranger or a new person you're talking to. And then we dismiss it, that is not mirroring and matching. You are not coming alongside them. And what I'm about to say is not natural for me. And every time I do it, it feels horrible, and it also feels wrong. So it goes against everything that I'm wired to do, because I want their sad or issue to go away. And so this isn't just the person like in deep sadness. This is also the lead says, why do you guys keep calling me? Right? It could be opposite extremes. And I talk to them about it.
Yeah. Amen.
So let's use an easy one. Like, I lost my spouse yesterday, right? There was a time where I'd be like, I'm so sorry. I'm going to go ahead and let you go. Because I'm like,
you think you're being a hindrance to them.
Yeah, exactly. But now it goes against everything in me, but I'm like, wow, I'm so sorry. How are you doing? I've never experienced that. I don't know what that's like, but it sounds like you're really struggling right now. And like, I'm because when I went through something bad, I had somebody actually say they went in it with me. And this is mirroring and matching. It's so funny.
Do you remember that conversation? Do you remember that person?
Yes.
Will you ever forget that person ever in your life?
No.
That's the dang point.
Yeah.
And how many people did that for you, Barry? I don't know what your story is. I have no idea what it was. How many people did it?
One.
It's so unbelievably rare, right? Anyways, I just wanted to accentuate that. Those moments are unforgettable moments. It's like you taking a brand and permanently searing it into their mind because you did something that nobody else is willing to do.
Right.
That's it.
And this is the power that is given to us when we're speaking to strangers about buying or selling a home. I mean, this is a huge opportunity to be bigger than just making sales. And you and I both know this, Robbie. If they do this, they will sell a lot.
they'll sell more every time.
Yeah,
They will.
they really will.
Yeah.
And I've got a new agent that I referenced a few sessions ago with you that continues to perpetually find herself in people's mess, not in the bad way, in a positive way. They're dealing with this and that, and I actually, it was funny, on the huddle this morning, I said to the individual, I said, you are finding yourself in the mix with these people. And some of them are buyers. Some of them probably will never be able to buy. I said, but is that natural for you? Because, the other new agents on this huddle right now aren't making connections like you are. So can you share with us how you're coming to this? And she's like, yeah, I just always find myself being an armchair counselor. I just can't help it. I was like, well, that's why you're going to do really good in real estate. So anyway, I keep getting us not really off track, but
it's great. I think that's a really good point. I think, I hope all that makes sense. I hope this is clicking for people and that this is so much bigger. Now let's talk about what it actually looks like, right? Like, how do you start mirroring and matching? And again, really what it comes down to. So I will advise people to write these things down because these are basically the 7 key things. I put up 4, right? So I should go like this: 7, 3 key things. The 7 key things that you can change in your conversations. Some of them you can change in person, some on the phone, and some in text. And we'll kind of dive into each of those things here in a moment. But these are the things that you can change about your natural self to better fit who you're speaking to, right? And the whole point of this, I hope you're realizing, the whole point of this lesson is, one, you should hopefully understand like DISC and understand people are different than you. Number 2 is hopefully you understand yourself a little bit better. And number 3 is hopefully, this is probably the biggest thing, I want you to understand how others perceive you better, right? That's key. So here's the 7 things. 7 things. Number 1 is the speed at which you're speaking. All right. I'm a pretty melatonin / I speak semi-quickly. I can get going. I know I can. I can go pretty quick. Some people speak like this. It's funny, Barry, because I have a lot of clients that use our system and messaging in Sierra, and I do all of my customer service support on an app called Marco Polo. And there's a really cool feature in Marco Polo where you can 1.5x, 2x, and 3x people, so they're going faster or slower. And some people, I've started categorizing people as, some people are 1xers, meaning I listen in real time because they speak really quickly. Some people are 3xers. I turn that 3x on and it sounds like some of the 1xers. So I'm making it go 3 times as fast and they're literally slower than the 1xer. All right. And it's funny. Anyway, so I bring that up because not everybody speaks at the same rate of speech. It goes differently. So that's the big thing. Speed is really how quickly you're speaking. And I'm mirroring and matching. If I know I'm right here and somebody speaks slower, and I can't speak like this and keep going and going really, really quick because they're going to be really, really offended because they're not going to hear anything I'm going to say. I have to slow it down and be able to bring it down maybe even slower than this. Or we're also not going to hear anything I'm going to say. The content of what I'm saying won't be heard. So that's number 1. Number 2 is tonality, right? Tone is pretty basic. It's the inflection of going up and down in different ways. Number 3 is total volume. So really loud to soft and quiet. Obviously, if somebody's really loud, you probably got to speak a little bit louder. If they're really quiet, you got to bring it down. That goes hand in hand with tonality quite a bit. Okay, those ones are regarding our voice, right? Let's move into the ones that are a little more interesting. Number 4, body language. Some people say, well, how can you mirror and match body language on the phone? Here's what I'll tell you. If I'm talking to a high I, guess what I do? I get up and walk around every time. Because Barry, I know dang well when you're talking on the phone, my friend, if you're in your natural state, you're walking around, high energy, moving around, right? I do that to literally change my physiology to match a high I energetic person. I realize I can become more energetic. If I'm talking to an S, guess what I do? No joke.
No, that's good. That's good.
Tony Robbins talks about this, right? If you want to change your energy, right? If you want to change the way you see the world, change your physiology, right? And if I want to see things from their perspective, if I'm talking to an SC who's really soft and skeptical, I'm literally going to curl up even more and talk like this. And guess what I do when I'm talking to the D? Stand up, chest out. I'm not going to do it because it looks weird with the camera, but I literally turn myself into a gorilla. I pound my chest a little bit because that's what D's do. We're going to fight. We're going to throw some poo at each other because that's what D's do. They're directing to the point. So I change my body language. Obviously, in person, there's other things you can change. If somebody's slouching a lot and you're sitting across the table from them, you need to be, slightly bent over. Even if you're normally, boom, like that, you got to mirror match it. So I'm changing my physical nature to match. Again, here's the thing with all four of these so far. I guarantee you do some of this subconsciously. I guarantee it's already happening. What you do is you start consciously doing it, and it hardwires it more into your subconscious. It's one of my things. As odd as it sounds, there is truly no situation I can ever find myself in where I will feel out of sorts, because I'm just so used to mirroring and matching and being a chameleon. I can go from being in a room with a 99D to a 99SC and polar opposites, and it's easy for me. The only reason that's easy is because I practice, intentionally focus on altering pieces of myself in phone calls or in person. It's how I roll. So add to that real quick. I got some more, but add to that real quick.
Yeah, no, I think that the body language aspect isn't discussed at all, ever. I was thinking about, from the person that's watching this course, especially if you either are newer or you don't have your skills sharpened as far as phone skills and things like that, there's a chance you could start to feel overwhelmed. And so I just want to highlight that self-awareness for me about what's going on is something I'm learning. I'm still growing in. It did not come to me naturally. And one of the things that helps me, so mirroring and matching, you notice Robbie he's got a body language for each type of person he's talking with. And it is predicated on him knowing the type of person he's talking to. Right? Because the person doesn't say, "Hey, Robbie, just an FYI, I'm a D."
No, never. I mean, the former serum that we tried doing that. It was an utter disaster. The only way you know is you mirror match from the first few moments of them engaging with you. That's it.
Right. And I would just say, this is why I love asking questions. Mm-hmm. Let the person share their story, come from curiosity, at least act curious, even if you're not. Just learn to grow in curiosity of others. It's a good skill to have. And just, you're going to pay attention to what they're saying, and that's going to give you an opportunity to give them that safe space. But keep going. I want to hear the rest of the 7.
Yeah. So number 5 is energy, right? And obviously your physiology impacts your energy greatly. If I'm, that high D and I'm ready to go, I'm ready to fight you, right? I've done this on coaching calls where somebody is role playing and this person's naturally a higher S. And then what I always do, by the way, in role plays is almost always in a role play situation, I start off with them role playing with somebody who's the polar opposite of them. And they hate it. They hate it because it's so scary. It's hard. It is. Right. If you can master that, if you can master mirroring and matching with the polar opposite of you, everything else is gravy. This is truly what it is. So what it comes down to is, I've seen it where people will take the physiology and stand up and do the whole gorilla, pounding their chests. And even if they don't do it physically, they will mentally start doing that. And I will literally have them role play again. And it's like a whole different human being on their end is now having the conversation. It's nuts, man, because they're in a different state of mind. And really what it comes down to is with energy, you usually either have high energy or low energy. And if you're a high energy person and you're talking to Eeyore from, just you heard that right. All right. From Winnie the Pooh, he talks Like, you know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah.
You got to bring it down. I'm not saying you got to become Eeyore because, goodness, I don't know if you'll ever recover. But you at least got to bring it down from way up here. The other one, so with energy, you got to do that, right? And the same thing, if you're a low energy person, you naturally, when you're talking to somebody that's high energy, you got to bump it up, right? And the point of all this is, I think everybody's different. Your hardwiring has created you to be a very special human being. What I have learned is it's not normal to do what we're talking about. It is exhausting, very exhausting, but it will help you connect better with other human beings. And really, to get to your point earlier, Barry, that helps you understand where they're coming from better, which helps you help other people better. That's really all it's coming down to.
Absolutely. Very, very well said. Super interesting. What number are we on?
5 energy. So number 6, all these kind of layer into each other. You'll notice they build on each other. And then number 7 is my favorite one. But number 6 is your mindset. And what usually ends up happening is the more you change the speed, your tonality, your energy, the volume, your physiology, the more your mindset changes. You literally see the world in a different shade than you did if you were just being you. And I think that's so valuable because then it's easier to anticipate and understand, well, what is it this person really wants? And then you can ask questions, right? Is this what you really want, or what are you really hoping to do here? And you can start asking questions that gauge it. And one of the biggest things that I think people go wrong with lead conversion is they have yes-oriented questions, meaning I only ask you things, Barry, that get me to yes. And for me, I've learned that you need to balance that with the no's. I want to find the parameters of what do you not want? What would cause you to stop all this? And so I think for me, that mindset helps me understand it helps me understand like where's conflicting areas. If I were there in their shoes and I wanted the 4-bedroom, 3-bathroom house for $400,000, but my pre-approval is up to $450,000. Am I willing to pay $450,000? So now I'm going to turn what I think is to be the truth, because I'm trying to mirror and match you and understand where you're coming from. I'm going to ask questions that validate, or maybe that allows them to invalidate my assumption, right? If I have an assumption, I never make an assumption. I ask a question every single time. I'd say something like, all right, Barry, so blah, 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 blah. Is that correct? Or help me understand that a bit better. So that's number 6. And just in lieu of time, I want to go to number 7.
All right.
This one's my favorite. This one probably applies the most. Number 7 is word choice. Okay. What that literally means is I will start ripping off your phrases, what you're saying. It's just natural. I do it all the time. If the more I hang out with Barry, the more I'm going to start stealing his phrases and vice versa. It's just how things work. And it's literally mirroring and matching.
That's so baller.
This one, it just happens. There you go. You freaking threw that in there. Very amazing question that a lot of my coaching clients and the people in our world talk about being ballers. And I will take.
I love it, dude. That's cool. I do.
No, it's great. I love it. But that's exactly it, right? Another really funny one, Barry, if you're comfortable with this, is for somebody who just dropped an right? They drop a swear word. If you're comfortable now layering that in, a swear word, you instantly earn that person's respect. There are certain words that when you layer it in, that makes them feel like, oh, Barry's me, right? And Barry's defenses come down. So I've learned that I'll do that, right? If somebody's you got to be very careful with this, right? And I don't want you to invalidate. Don't go do something that's offensive to you, your heart, your soul. Please don't do that. I grew up in the back of a semi, so I know every swear word in the book. So that's just who I am. But if somebody drops that, it was very, very normal for me to lean into that, right? Yeah. And I can have that conversation. I can start layering that in, and it's just talking back and forth, right? Yeah. The baller stuff is an example. Like if somebody said, dude, that's baller. Like that, I'm like, that's my people. Somebody said low key on a Ylopo Facebook comment the other day. I was like, this is my person right here. Who's dropping low key in the conversation? So it's just like when someone says parts of your language, you're like, respect, right? Yeah. So, and it's the opposite is true. I had a coaching client who was from Tennessee. This was a older person, and I cussed at one of our events in my presentation. I try my best to limit the heck out of it. And it was a hard cuss word. And she came up to me and she told me she was drastically offended by it. Well, I learned, because I was coaching her team, of I am never going to say any of those words ever again, because it offends them, right? So it goes both ways. Yeah. What I'm looking for to really tie this all together is I'm looking towards the other person. I'm looking at Barry. How's he communicating? What's he saying? All this stuff. What's his posture like? And I'm just emulating it, right? That's it. That's all I'm doing. And these are just like 7 things. There's probably a heck of a lot more. We could go super deep. There was one time where one of my agents even always had a business outfit in their office, and they always had a very casual outfit. And the reason is that sometimes when somebody's coming in for an appointment, if they're much more business oriented and he walks in the casual, not going to respect it. Mm-hmm. Some people, if you walk in with the high dress to the nines business outfit, they're not going to respect you, right? A really good example is my dad is a truck driver. He is much more comfortable around somebody that's wearing plain clothing compared to somebody that's in a suit. It's not to say my dad or the person in the suit's wrong, but my dad is more comfortable around somebody wearing a plaid shirt compared to a collared, tied dress jacket individual. And some of my agents have done that, where I'm taking that coat off, they're slapping that away, unbuttoning or untucking the shirt, taking the tie off, because that person isn't dressed that way. So you can keep going layers into this, is the whole point. Really, the point is we're changing our point of view to see more of theirs. That's the goal, the whole goal here. And that helps us understand where they're coming from at a much higher level.
And I think that's really insightful of you to be aware of, the language aspect, because you want your message to be well received, right? And if they're not doing that, then, that's obviously a problem. So I think that's probably a big takeaway for people. I think sometimes we've overvalued being authentic to the point where we're just calloused, basically. And what you're saying is just having that sensitivity. And I think also my listing agents, I'll tell them all the time, they'll have their client is really mad at the buyer. Their seller's really mad at the buyer, and the seller's like yelling at the agent. And then the agent thinks, oh, I'm going to mirror them, and starts yelling back at them. And that's called an argument, right? And so I said, this is what you do, okay? Instead of defending the other party, I want you just to metaphorically, if you guys are looking at each other, I just want you to stand next to them metaphorically and I can't believe they did that. Yeah, that's really messed up. I said, and it'll change the world when you're with the buyer. And they're like, oh man, look at that crack in that wall. Yeah, that's horrible. Look at this one. Just go where they're going.
Yeah, especially regarding emotion, right? Because again, the moment you start, there's a difference between being a sponge. I think being a sponge is adding fuel to the fire, I think, instead of mirroring and matching it. That's 100% true. I agree with that.
Right. Yeah.
It's nuts. Barry, did we achieve our goal? Did we talk? Do you think people pulled some mirroring and matching nuggets?
I think this is the best one we've done. Actually, I really do.
This is one of my favorites to talk about, dude. I love matching.
Let's see. Does anybody have any questions in the group? Lots of comments, lots of, people saying, that they learned things. Yeah. I think everybody's getting used to the StreamYard thing, to be honest with you. It's a different format. Sure. But I think that, this is session 5. Session 6 is kind of bringing it all together. And I think that's actually the name of the session, isn't it?
Wrapping it up or something like that. Okay,
wrapping it up. Yeah. And I think
that'll be right after Christmas. Yeah. Lots of double entendres there. Many meanings that are Christmas time, year, all of it.
My next baby will be here first week of January, I think.
Oh.
Due date's January 10th, but she's always had them like a week early. So
you just cut one week off in your mind.
Yeah, Robbie, man, I always learn so much just sitting with you in these sessions. And I know I'm supposed to be helping teach, but I just can't help it. So I appreciate, your insight and not only what you're teaching here, but also just the work that you're doing in the community. It's awesome. It really is. So we appreciate it.
For sure, man. I'm only disappointed because I didn't see edamame. So
I did. I was eating edamame.
Oh,
The
you
whole
just,
time, actually.
I just didn't notice. Maybe that was it.
Oh yeah, I was. Yeah, here, look. I mean, I honestly, it got to the point where I was picking through them so much, I felt like it was rude, so I put it down. But yeah, no, dude. Brain food is protein. Come on now.
100%. I agree.
All right, dude. You have a great rest of your day, man.
Thanks, Barry. Peace out, brother. See you.
All right.